So hosting an event for an 18th century woman was her way of showing off on a large scale. So it was not only her clothes and her hair and what her house looked like, but the big importance was also what is she placing on the table, because she is showing off what her husband is capable of providing for the family, but more importantly, her skill in the kitchen, even if she's not the one doing the cooking and she's hired somebody or they have enslaved people doing all the work. She is showing off that she has the skill to hire somebody to do the work and that she can make sure the work is being done correctly. So if the table is not set in just the right way, because they have manuals and cookbooks that will show you how your table should be set and where certain dishes should be placed. And if they're not, it very quickly snowballs into she doesn't know what she's doing. The food doesn't taste great, and then it spreads throughout the community, and it doesn't just affect her. It affects her husband, her parents, that they weren't able to teach her right, or for some of them it was, oh, she was a problem child, basically. What we would today call a problem child. She was unable to be taught. So that's why she's that way. Oh, you feel bad for the husband, and then her kids, it'll be the same thing. Oh, they're not going to amount to anything because she couldn't do this. It was middle class and upper, because the lower class were more of the workers. So they are the ones in the kitchens, in the businesses, doing the work, trying to basically make a living. They may not be the ones throwing the party. They are probably not going to be the ones throwing the parties. But they are still knowing how to do a lot of this work, not just because they're in the kitchens doing the work, but the goal is to eventually achieve that status where you need that knowledge. And if you don't achieve it, the goal is that your child will achieve it. So they need to have that knowledge so that when they get there, they can do it. And in the 18th century, overnight, your station can change. In a single night, you can lose everything. And you've gone from the top to the very bottom. And you can also go from the very bottom to the very top very quickly. You may not know everything, but you're going to learn it as fast as you can to fit into the society that you're in, because you're already in the gossip circles. You're already being talked about behind fans and, behind hands of, oh my gosh, you know where they were yesterday and today they're here. So you're going to have at least the rudimentary knowledge of what is supposed to be done to throw a good party, to do a good meal, and make sure that your kids are going to know how to do it better than you. So sugar was very expensive at this time, so was chocolates. Fruit could be expensive, especially things like citrus, pineapple. Pineapple was a very rare thing. I've only seen maybe a dozen recipes in about 30 cookbooks from the period that talk about preserving pineapples. So citrus was hard to get, but if you could do multiple things in large quantities with sugar or with citrus fruits, you were showing off. A big show-off kind of dish would be pressed sugar. So it's literally flavored sugar that they would press into molds, let it dry and knock it out, and they would just sit it out, and it was a candy that you would eat. And they would do puddings, or the favorite thing was called jellies. It's kind of like Jell-O is today, but they would do them in these large, tall pudding molds or Jell-O molds, and then they would just let them stand there, and they would be also called standing creams. The bigger you could get, the better your cook was, which meant you had more money. And the more you could do meant the more cooks you had more money. We are still eating a lot of the same foods that they ate in the 18th century. So a big thing for a while, and at least in my area of Ohio, pot roast for Sunday night dinner. If you go back to the 18th century, you're technically eating rump ragout. And it sounds fancy and it's French, but at that time you wanted to sound French. And then you have the revolution and you want to start sounding more English. And then we have the War of 1812, and now we have to be Americans, because 1812 is when we finally find our identity as Americans, and you find it now as pot roast. So we still eat and it's done pretty much the same way that they did it, except for we have it in the ovens now. It's done the same way, served the same way with the same vegetables, and everybody loves to eat that. Another thing is, if you're going to talk about, say, the pressures for women aspect, we all know the Pinterest craze or the Instagram worthy shots and Instagram fails. That's our version of the pressure of putting on a good party. being able to fill a table appropriately, make the dishes appropriately, run a kitchen correctly. Our Pinterest fails were their party fails. So it's still very much a pressure for the women have to be good in the kitchen. Doesn't matter that I can't boil water. I am a woman, I'm supposed to be able to do this. And then society going, what do you mean you can't do this? You're female, you should be able to do this. Weren't you taught well enough by your mom or your grandmother? So it's still the same pressures and it's still reflected on the same people. It's just done a little bit differently. So in the 18th century, everyone likes to say they ate bland food. Their food was not bland, it was just flavored differently. Our spices today, we have a certain set of spices we think is Christmas spices. So your nutmeg, your clove, your allspice, your cinnamon. You save that for your sweet things for Christmas, and that's all the time you use it. In the 18th century, it was very much an everyday food spice. So you will find your meat dishes, you throw in allspice, nutmeg, sometimes clove, and then a bunch of parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. But the base is the nutmeg, the clove, and you can really taste it. They pickled with it. You cooked everything with it. There's another gentleman who does 18th century cooking, and he always talks about nutmeg is in everything. Close, not everything. I like to say more clove or allspice is in everything because you find it in so much more. But our Christmas spices were everyday spices, and when you start cooking with them every day, they still have the special Christmas feeling to them, but you don't notice them as Christmas spices anymore. They change, and it changes the meat, how it tastes and how it cooks. And sometimes it was also used as a preservation method because you will find recipes that talk about potting meat when it's already starting to go bad. And so you mix these spices in and it stops the going bad process. So you can do their version of canning. But I love using the allspice in more things. I have some friends that don't like using allspice, but I use it in everything and they don't notice. So once you start using it, you miss it, and you can see why they enjoyed using it in everything. 18th century cookbooks are fun to read for a lot of reasons. One being which you have to have somewhat of a knowledge of cooking already because their favorite thing to do is say the butter the size of an egg. I immediately go to which egg because they had several different types of poultry at the time. So I'm going chicken, duck, goose, how big of an egg? So you have to kind of have some knowledge with it. They enjoy using the term also enough. So you have to know what enough flour is, enough milk, enough sugar. And it can get frustrating very quickly because you don't even know if it may come out and it tastes great, but did I do it right? Or is it my 21st century looking at it? And sometimes a lot of times in the 18th century, the cookbooks expect you to already have a base knowledge of cooking of that time. So they can have very short recipes. There's a gooseberry tart that says, make it like a rhubarb tart. So then you go looking for a rhubarb tart and there's no rhubarb tart in the cookbook. So then you're sitting there going, how am I supposed to make a rhubarb tart? They would have already known how to do a rhubarb tart, so they wouldn't have thought twice about it. I'm sitting here going, I need to find a rhubarb tart. And I start digging through cookbooks. I can't find a rhubarb tart. I finally did. It took about 3 days to find one. But then the process didn't make sense because it was about 20 years earlier than this cookbook. So I had to then figure out, is she referring to that one? Is she expecting me to already know? They'll do things like that. They'll tell you, we'll do it like this. And they are expecting you to already know what this means. And not always do they tell you what this means. Sometimes they will also at the beginning of a chapter give you all the hints and things that you need, but they don't tell you in the recipes that the hints are back at the beginning. So you have to start all over again and start reading the front. And sometimes they'll tell you, enough flour means this, or it means to do it this way, but the recipe just says enough flour. And so you have to be very careful on how you're reading it, where our cookbooks today tell you how much flour you actually need to make it work. And sometimes they will tell you if it looks like this is how much more you need to add of whatever. These 18th century cookbooks expect you to know how to fix it on your own. There are a lot of things about this time frame that are my favorite, but one of the biggest is, for me, the 18th century feels like when the United States is full of so much hope, because there is so much going on and so many chances for so many people to do whatever they want. We're expanding, we're growing, we're learning who we are, finding our feet, becoming what we think we should be. even with all the bad things that are going on at the same time, the enslavement, the indigenous destructions, at the same time, there's a lot of hope. There's still, we are trying to do the best that we know how to at this time. We're not going to get it right, but we're trying. This is what we know, and we're still trying to do the best we can. And you can see, comparing it to today's history, you can see so much of the base of who we are today, even as people, our history, how things are run. It still can be easily traced back to this time frame. So for me, it's kind of reminding people of where we all came from, the good, the bad, and the ugly. But this is where we came from, and it's how we're all connected. We're all connected to it in some way. And for me, it's a reminder of connecting it. And at least from the women's history aspect, I'm a big believer of if you stop saying their name, they're gone. So a lot of these women don't have names. We'll never know who they were, but we know they existed. So if I can just be this big conglomerate of a bunch of stories that I've learned, these women aren't gone. They're not lost. Their voices are still heard. They will still be heard. And if I can take it to a certain point, someone will come after me, hopefully, and take it from where I stop and keep going. And eventually, everybody that was here at this time will have a name and be heard and be known, at least even if it's just in a tax record or in genealogy or something like that. Everybody will be known and no one will be forgotten. Oh, there's so much about the 18th century that is fun. For me, as a woman's history person, I'm enjoying digging through the original documents and just even finding, Mrs. Smith, Mrs. Robinson, and finding out that they were there without a name, but they were still there. But also seeing the roots of modern feminism taking place a long time ago where you don't expect to see it. You have people like Mercy Otis Warren, and I think it's Mary Wollstonecraft, who are these outspoken women, and they don't care. And they're writing satirical poems and plays about political things that are going on, and are more than happy to write a letter to the newspaper, even under a pen name, explaining why things are not the way they should be, and why women are important and why we should have rights, and are arguing out in public with men like Washington and Adams why we deserve to have rights and why they are wrong, and not caring. And seeing them starting what we consider the feminist movement today, and being supportive of women and helping create these intricate networks within communities and women, that a woman in one town can be known 10 towns away for a good reason or bad reason, but there is a big network that if she needs help, 10 towns away is going to find a way to help her, and all the towns in between will figure out what needs to be done to help her. And it's the same thing when you hit the frontier. It's this big giant web network. A lot of people will talk about the country was built with a tomahawk and a rifle, or a hammer and a rifle. I go, no, you're forgetting a very piece of equipment. You're forgetting the apron, because the guys wouldn't have moved and done everything that they did west without women being there. And we did it wearing an apron, because aprons were our second set of hands. We were the ones making things work while you were out hunting. We were the ones out making the farm and the business work while men were out fighting. We made the war work by doing the clothing and sending food and things to the armies. We made the boycotts work. We made everything work while they were out doing whatever. You wouldn't have America. Yeah, they fought. That's great. They shot at each other. You wouldn't have that without us back home taking care of the kids, the houses, the farms, producing the food and the things they needed to go shoot each other out in the field. So you can't say America was built with just these two. You have to include an apron, because that is significant for women. Most women would have an apron. Most women had aprons until we really got into the workforce. You have to have that apron, because America wouldn't have expanded. America wouldn't be America without us, even if we're not in the history books. We were there. We made it work.